What's up, y'all? My name is Chris Porter. I'm excited to do our third daily Illustrator challenge for the month of May. Thank you for joining me here. If you don't know who I am, like I said, my name is Chris Porter. I am creative director over at Baby Grand. We are a full creative studio in Memphis, Tennessee. We do everything from logo design, illustration, branding. We do web, a lot of different things. I really love to do branding and illustration. That's kind of like my bread and butter. So today we are going to be doing a spring postcard illustration, which is pretty cool. You should have the file. I'm using the links in all of the Behance and everything like that. So if you need the link for the file to do your own cool postcard, follow that link there. Let's hop in the chat and see what's going on with everybody. Thanks, Cody, for throwing that link into the chat. I'm really excited to dive into this. So why don't we just get right to it so we can make the best use of our time. Let me know in the chat where everybody is hanging out from. Where are you, going to be doing this challenge with us today? So here we go. We've got, oops, sorry about that. Hit the mic. We've got the daily challenge here. And so in today's challenge, we're going to be taking this design style that you see here and translating it into your favorite flower. I don't really have like a favorite flower necessarily. I really don't know a lot of foliage, but I really like daisies. And I feel like a daisy is sort of like the quintessential springtime flower. So I think it'd be pretty cool to turn this art style into turn this daisy into this art style. So this is a resource that you could find on any sort of Adobe stock. If you want to find this, you sure you go find it. But we are going to just kind of have these in here. I saved a few in here for you to be able to look on yourself, and you can kind of see how these files are set up. These are masks, and so if you ever want to see what the files look like outside of the mask, you can right click and do release mask, and you can see how to mask files. So you want to have like bleed in all of your files, which is why we have bleed going here. When you're doing a print design, you want to make sure that you're in CMYK. You can work in RGB and then convert it, but I personally like to just work directly into CMYK because it's best for print. So we're going to Control Z, Command Z, and just kind of bring that mask back. And here's the thing we're going to do to create this. We're going to sort of mimic this style. We don't want to create exactly the same as these leaves and everything. We want to make our own leaves. So we're going to take this background here and we're just going to create a square, knowing sort of what we want to do. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, which is this one here. You can hit I, and I'm going to try to just select maybe a light blue in here and then kind of work from there. Okay, great. So that blue will be sort of where we start from. And then I'm going to come into, let's see, which one do I want to use? Let's do the color guide. And now in the color guide, you can select the specific color and you can kind of use different complementary colors to find the right one. I want to find a very light shade of blue to complement this pattern, this style we're going to use. And so we are going to let's just select shades maybe. Let's see what we get with shades. And what's up, Franco? I see you're in Switzerland. That's pretty great. Frank, you're in France. Okay, Nashville for Cody. That's dope. The weather here is questionable. It's questionable, Cody. We will see if we get tornadoes. I'm hopeful that it doesn't get too crazy during the stream, but we should be all good to go. Fingers crossed. Okay, so we'll just get a little background color. We're going to want to make this lighter for sure, but if we're not finding what we can do in the color guide, we can definitely come into the color selector and really drag and drop. That's the one that you can get a bit more personal with, and then you can see how this color guide changes. And so I like to make sure I keep that so that way in case I need to go back and find like a monochromatic thing, I can go back and find it. So now I've got a little bit better of a color. But let's just keep this for now and let's go directly into some very simplistic styles of building shapes. And so for building these flowers, we're going to be wanting to build the stems, we'll be wanting to build the bud and the petals. And so in this file, you can see that they've got a few different ways of doing it. Ideally, we're using some monoline treatment here to see how to create some shading without using stippleism or dots instead, or we can use some really cool lines to create some shading and to create some minimalist leaves on those stems. So let's just say we want to create, we've got 2 main flowers, 2 accent flowers, and then leaves, and then some dots, and then we want to have some petals coming off. You can see we have these sort of small brown, maybe like bees or something in there. So, and then these kind of like circular ones. So let's just start by making the petal from the jump. So I'm going to just use the circle here, and I'm going to delete this point. And I think that's still going to end up being a bit too large. You can kind of see here, if we zoom in and then we make this an outline, you can sort of see that this petal is definitely a very different type of shape, and we could directly just take this by using the direct select tool, which is this one here. We could hit A, copy that, and then bring that, and then we have our bud that mimics everything else in this style. How we would actually make that is we could just simply use our circle tool and, make it ourselves. We don't have to directly take it. It's pretty easy to do. But if you want to actually have it to where you can have it flat, we can do this. And now we have it there. And we're going to want to make sure that this is white, because that is just a simple way to kind of have a little bit of contrast. And then let's make a little bit of a palette selector here. So let's do a circle. We'll click and drag, and then I'll hit Command D a few times. That'll duplicate the action that I just did, so I don't have to keep clicking and dragging. And let's just kind of create a palette from this picture. Now I can do this much easier if I actually go into Adobe Color and I use this and go in and make it create a palette from this. But for the sake of time, we're just going to use our eyedropper tool and we're going to do this. And so you can see that these greens all sort of take the same shade. So we're just going to take this same green shade here, and we'll want to have the same light green shade. So we use that eyedropper tool again to create that. And we've got 2 different shades of yellow. So let's go ahead and take another shade of yellow as well from this. Maybe take the darker one in case we need to put a little bit of fading treatment there. And then we've got a black. So let's go ahead and take the black as well. Okay, so these are going to be the colors we're going to be using for everything. All right. So we've got our main bud here. Now let's create some petals. And you notice that we don't really have anything going towards the middle because we're going to put some text here in the middle. So let's make sure that this flower kind of petals out like this. And so I'm going to use the shape builder tool, and what I'm going to do is just kind of create what I think might be a pretty decent little petal. So let's turn this white using the eyedropper tool. I'm going to send this to the back by Shift Command and then left bracket, okay, on my keyboard. Going to do that there. We're going to Option drag this out, and before we do that, actually let's just make it straight and then we can twist it as we need to. So let's do this, and I feel like that's a pretty decent little shape there for one of these petals. I kind of like that. And so we'll come over here to the shape builder tool, and now if I hold, you can notice that it's highlighting some of these areas. Now if I were to do this, it would create one large shape, but if I hold the Alt key, you can delete shapes. Great. And then it gives me these points here that I can curve. I can curve this directly into a circle if I wanted to, and it's kind of giving me 2 shapes, which is pretty nice. So let's just take this here and let's turn it, and let's start to build out this here. We're going to bring this to the front. That's Shift Command right bracket. Great. Now let's try to do something pretty interesting here. Let's try to use the build on a path tool. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to create this straight line, and then I'm actually going to use my shape curvature tool, my pen curvature tool. Let's turn this into a line, and then let's see, let's make sure that this is very visible for us. So let's do this here. Let's make that a little thicker, and I want to make sure that I'm building this right. Okay, so we'll select both of these, and let's see, where is the build on the shape path here. Great. So we've got objects on path, which is sort of a new feature, right? So we'll select this object on path. We'll select this one first. Sorry, object on path, and then we will do this. And now, oh, well, look at that. Looks like we got a little bit of a crash on there. Sorry about that, y'all. That must have been a little too strong for the computer. That's kind of crazy. Now, I've never had that happen once. So let's load Illustrator right back up. Crash unexpectedly. Love a good crash on stream, but that's okay. We're here. Let's fade back to this real quick so I can get all this loaded up. Okay. And the beautiful thing, so here's the thing. Sometimes you might have a crash, and that's okay, because the beautiful thing about Illustrator is that it can pull you right back into where you just were. So even though I've had a crash, I'm right back here. Okay. So instead of doing the object on path, since we just had a little bit of a glitch, we're just going to click and drag this over. Okay. So I've got these two petals. Let's go ahead and shrink these just a bit. And I want to make sure that they're symmetrical. So I'm going to copy, paste, and then we're going to transform, reflect, vertical 90 degrees. Great. Okay. So that would be able to, we're going to send these to back. And one cool way to do this to make sure they're all spaced out correctly is select them all, then come down to the align and then select horizontal distribute. You know, that is how you would get them aligned, but it still feels off because there's not a middle one. Okay, so I'm going to actually bring this back, go over to my properties, and you can see that the angle is still rotated. So I can actually rotate it back to being straight. Okay, and then I'm going to bring this out a little bit and actually just align this to the bottom. Now let's give this a little bit of an align treatment here. Make sure that it's not aligned to the artboard, but aligned to the selection. And still a little bit off, but that's okay. We can use our own design eyeball to make sure that we've got it there. Okay. And that's looking pretty good. Great. Okay, so in terms of just like getting this on the screen here, we're going to make sure we're going to group these and we're going to bring them to the front. Okay. So that's pretty good. I'm starting to like how that's coming together. And yeah, I love how it just happens for the first time on stream when you're live and you're trying to teach. You know, that's just how it goes sometimes. But it's all good. We're prepared. We're prepared. So let's align this horizontally to center. Make sure that that's feeling pretty good. And I want to make sure that all of these have these similar styling in terms of them being aligned. So I'm actually going to make sure that this is about where it needs to be in that. See how we've got these sort of aligned. I can see my outline. I see where that's kind of at in terms of height. Bring that back to the center. And let's go ahead and build the stem for this. Okay, so really simple. We're just using basic shapes here to build these out. All right, let's do that. And one thing that I like to do is actually like to have my layers named. So we're going to change this to background. We're going to put this behind and we're going to cut and paste in place for this, and we're going to lock that background. So now I don't have to worry about it basically getting in my way for the rest of this time. Let's make this a little shorter, and let's keep building some petals. So let's look back at our reference image. You know, we don't have a ton of petals, right? We don't have leaves coming out. We have a couple there, so we don't want to get too crazy with it with this one, but we do have a little bit of like these circles coming out, and we want to make sure to add a little bit of texture to these. And so what I'm going to do is just straight up use again my pen curvature tool. We'll go here and let's add a little bit of a symmetrical line there. Change that, and let's bring in this let's see, we don't have a ton of pink. Let's see if that looks decent. It's not so vibrant, so maybe we bring in this darker orange. Okay, we'll make that a line. Great. And then let's give this maybe a little thicker. And because we're trying to mimic how this feels, you know, we want to make sure that we do this in a really unique way. Okay, so we know that this angle is 344. So I'm just going to copy that. And ideally you would want to do this beforehand, but I'm just kind of showing you how that we can, you know, back it up a little bit. Okay, so that's 344. Kind of do the opposite, and there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna copy this, and I actually have some cool plugins installed where I can do this quick little mimic. So we can do that there. Great. All right, let's cut this and let's paste it in place, and now let's group these. Let's make sure these are centered as well. Great. Bring this into the center. Cool, cool, cool. And I want these to make sure that they're touching. So I'm going to actually shrink them a little bit. Great. And I'm going to space this out to 3 and 1, 2, 3. Great. All right. And if we need to extend this, we can come right back to our curvature tool. And well, this one doesn't want to play too nicely, but we can just give it a little bit extra treatment. Not a problem. Then we just can come in here, use this, bleed it out just slightly, all right? Nothing too crazy. We don't have to get too fancy. Okay, so I'm really liking how this vibe is, and now let's build out a little bit of a leaflet to it, okay? So again, I'll use my curvature tool here. I'll come here, let's click this, and then let's give it a little bit of a curve. And I can do this with the circle builder as well. I don't have to use my curvature tool, but I really like using it because it just adds a little bit of, I feel more guaranteed that this curve is going to work correctly. Okay, so let's do this. Let's make it a little thicker, and let's just bring in a simple circle. Maybe make it white. Great. Let's make this a little thinner, you know, try to match those. Again, let's make this a little thin. We'll zoom in, match that there. I like how that is starting to feel. Maybe we can have it feel like it's kind of one of those little wavy guys, right? You know, have you ever seen one of those little those wavy guys at the car lot? You know, the plugin is called Astute Graphics. It's something that you can plug in for Adobe specifically, and it's really neat how you can have a few of those built in. Okay, so I actually think that's a little bit too goofy. And I actually want to reflect this. So we'll come here and reflect it, and we'll go feeling like this. And let's make it to where it feels a little bit more natural, like it's a little leaflet coming out. There we go. That's starting to feel a little bit better. Great. And let's thin this up just a little bit more. Cool, cool, cool. All right, I like the way that's looking. I like the way that's looking. All right, let's group this. And now we've got our main one built. Let's actually build these side ones. So I'm going to click and drag this over, and I'm going to bring this up a little higher. Okay, now I don't want to have it totally over there. So I'm just going to do this, and then instead of having this be a square, I'm actually just going to make this a line, because then you'll notice a difference. What I can do is I drop, and then I can just drag this down much easier. Okay, I can adjust the thickness a little bit more. And then because I put my background layer as a background instead of that, I can just send it to back, and it's not going to go behind, which is really convenient. Very convenient. So click, drag, let's reflect this, transform, reflect, and maybe do that there. And then let's give it a little bit more treatment. Is that a bit too much? Yeah, probably a bit too much there. Great. Starting to like how that is coming together, because these are very random. You know, these daisies, they're not totally symmetrical, right? As you can see in this photo. Okay, so we've kind of got this going. Let us do another little reflection here, and I can do this very easily with that little plugin. Boom, that is done. Okay, now I've got my palette. Let's just move this over. And let's get all these. And what I want to do is make sure that I reflect this, you know, pretty much symmetrically. Okay, so I kind of want to add a little bit of a shading gradient to this. So I'm actually going to come here, going to use my curvature tool. I'm going to see if I can add a little bit of the darker orange to this as well. Just add a little bit more to these. Okay. All right, I like that. There we go. Let's just bring this over and bring that there. And the beautiful thing is that I can use this align tool and make sure everything is feeling really good. And it's also got a little smiley face to it. Okay, so I'm feeling pretty nice about those. Do we want to make these have a little bit more flavor to them? No, I think we're doing pretty good. So let's do this. I'll come back into my plugin tool. I'm actually gonna reverse it because I'm constraining that angle. I can come to the middle here. And oh, see, I'm going a little too high. I'm going a little too high because that's the middle. So I need to bring these down some. Let's bring them down. There we go. That's probably right. But, you know, we can easily just, instead of using the plugin, we can use the things built into Adobe. We can copy, paste, shift that around, make sure that's aligned kind of where we want it to be. And so you can see this cool spacer that's going on. If you can see the pink here over to the right, you see where it says the 0.76 inches. That's allowing you to know exactly the dimension between. It's letting you know this is pretty equal. And so I like to know that distance. Let's group this and we can then make sure it's right there in the center. Okay, now let's add a few little dots here just for some texture purposes before we have to jump off the stream. Okay. This is looking pretty nice. I like the way that these are coming together. Okay, we'll add one there. We want to add like a smaller one here. You know, maybe we give this one, let's see, maybe give a different little shade of blue. Maybe if we can pull one. Yeah, I like that it's a different little shade there. We'll come here with it. Great. All right, so I'm gonna hit this text box and let's just add a little cool spring phrase. Let's do hello spring. Okay, let's center that up. Let's bring it in here. And just, we want to add a cool little font. So, you know, we'll come in here. I really like the fonts from Chutzpah that are in here. So let's do Beverly. Great, Beverly Drive. Yeah, that's looking nice. I love their fonts that they have. The Chutzpah fonts are so great. They're great people too. So we want to make it a little bit more specific to this space. So let's shrink that down. We'll kind of fit this into a little bit of a nook. Yeah, there we go. Now we're feeling good. Okay, there should be some little glyphs in here. Maybe we can steal. Let's see. I don't know if they have any underlines that we can steal in here. Either way, they have a lot of really great glyphs. You can see that you can pull these in if you need to. They do have a little heart, which I think would go a long way. So let's do this. Let's make this white. Yeah, I like the way that's looking. And then just give it a little bit of a background. Let's send this to the back and then maybe do a little bit of this or maybe a little bit of orange, a little bit of blue. Yeah, that's feeling nice. Okay, then let's bring a heart in here. Maybe we bring a heart there and then let's rotate it on this side. Maybe right there. Okay, let's change this font size to maybe 36. Let's make these maybe this little red here. Great. Now let's preview this and we can see how it starts to come together in a really, really simple format. All right, and that's a pretty cool little Hello Spring postcard that we made from scratch to kind of match the different aesthetics for this stream. If we want to, we can actually bring it into Photoshop. We can export for screens. We can do like a JPEG, and this is something we covered before and how to do this. So we come here, we can export, and we could bring into Photoshop. And if you had another file, you know, you might be able to bring some stuff in. Let's go here. Well, ideally what you want to do is put it into your Adobe library, but Let's just copy it. Paste. And we can come here. Stretch this thing out a little bit. Great. We'll copy this. We'll paste it. Put it back in there. Layer it accordingly. You can kind of see how that starts to come together, right? You can see that you can create a cool little mock-up with all of this stuff. But anyway, that is how we're able to do this. I appreciate y'all joining in for the stream. Thank y'all for all of this cool interaction. I hope that y'all have had a great time. Make sure to stay tuned for the rest of the Adobe live streams we got coming up. Some really great content. And join me next week for another daily challenge. Let me know if y'all have had a good time. Until then, I'll see you in the next stream.